Today is the December 2nd, and we just had a quiz, and I've only graded one class, but it is clear to me we didn't know what we were doing. So I'm doing a super fast video. This is actually going to be a review. I mean, a really short review. I'm just reminding you of a couple of things that I'm seeing a bunch of people miss. And I'm also going to include a super short review of the lesson that we did, or not the lesson, but well, yeah, the lesson, the mistakes on the last quiz from, I don't know, maybe even before break, but it was on solving for angles and triangles. And I believe that one was more specific to congruent triangles. So you'll see some stuff on congruent triangles, isosceles triangles. I might mention equilateral, but those were a little easier, it looked like, based on the quizzes. So with that in mind, a couple of things to note. I don't have this written in here. I guess I'll draw it in really quickly. If you see a figure and it's more complex, actually, let's just do this. And it's got like a triangle here, and then this comes through here, and you got another triangle out here, and it's giving you measures of information. I'm still seeing some people miss a few concepts that we've talked about, or forget about, or whatever you want to call it. So first of all of the angles add up to 180, the internal angles. On the last quiz, a lot of kids are still getting confused about which angles add up to 180. Sometimes kids are saying just two. If I don't give you something in one of the angles like this and there's not information there, didn't mean to do that. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Let's see, can I get that back? Actually, maybe I can just do that. So if I only give you those two angles, a lot of kids are just taking that. Let's see, pin. So I give you x and 2x. Kids are saying, oh yeah, well, 2x plus x equals 180. No, you have to add all three angles. So somehow you would have to figure out the third angle. I would give you enough information to figure it out. So again, it has to be three angles. Even if I don't give you anything in the third angle, you have to be able to figure out what's in the third angle where there's nothing there. So now I would be talking about this angle down here. Somehow I would give you information like maybe it's an isosceles triangle. Maybe I might give you that this angle over here is 110 degrees. So if we know that's 110 degrees, we would do the thing where we did the semicircle. So I could now solve and say, okay, well then if that has to add up to 180, then that definitely means that this is going to be 70 in here, and I can use that along with the other two x's, 2x plus 70. Somehow, though, it's got to be three angles. Another mistake that I saw quite often, actually didn't do a very good job in this, but I'll do it now. If you see a degree symbol, it is about the measure of angles. If you don't see a degree symbol, it's about the length of the sides. I've only graded one class and I've already had 5 people make a mistake. And if I say like 2x plus 1 here and 4x subtract 7, and down here is 3x plus 3, I've already had kids try to add those together and set them equal to 180 somehow. Those are about the lengths of sides. There's no degree symbol. Sides don't add up to any specific number because triangles can be any size. We talked about that in class many times. Sides do not add up to a specific number. Sometimes you can set the sides equal to each other, but well, yeah, that's about all you can do really with sides, unless it's a right triangle, and then maybe you can do some a squared, b squared, c squared stuff, but we haven't even quizzed on that yet. Let's see what else. So again, I kind of already mentioned it, but this is one that a few kids forgot. We're starting to get that semicircle that those two, or even if it's more than two, have to add up to 180. So I think that's just some general reminder stuff from, like I said, that was the quiz before Thanksgiving. So now let's go down to the other problem. Oh, it's back. All right, so with that in mind, if we have some triangles, first of all, I cannot assume anything about measures of angles. So I cannot assume this angle is a right angle or anything right there. It doesn't really look like it, but sometimes we're trying to assume things, which I'll get into that in a minute. Actually, let me draw out a figure on the next page just so I can. Oh, that was not very good. Oh, actually, let's do this. Let's make it even better. There. We'll come back to that. That's just my reminder. All right, so with that in mind, on this particular screen, we could say, all right, well, first thing I know, and if you need to do this to help yourself, make sure you do it at the beginning. Start with baby steps. I can say, well, I know this is about the length of a side. There is no degree symbol. It's the length of a side. I know this is about the length of a side. I know these are about angles. There are degree symbols on those, right? So in the last quiz, and we talked about it many times, you have got to use the name to match up angles and set up an equation. I create triangles where you can't really tell which angle matches up with which angle unless you use the name. I don't like this one is kind of obvious that R matches up with K. They're both the skinniest angles. My drawings are not like that. You have got to use the name. So with that in mind, I can say, okay, well, what's the name? So angle J, if you need to write all this out before you start, do it. Angle J equals angle Q. So I could set those equal. Whatever's in those angles has to equal each other. Angle K equals angle R. And I'm doing this just because J and Q are the first letter, K and R are the second letter. And then lastly, angle L equals angle S. If they are the third letter, then they are equal. They have the same measure because these are congruent triangles. That's what I circled in green up there. So if the triangles are congruent, we talked about this last class, or one of the last couple classes. If two triangles are congruent, then there are congruent parts of those triangles that will match up. So when it comes to sides, the concept is the same. Side JK is the same length or is congruent to QR. Those are the first two letters in both sets of letters. So they have to be the same measure, the same length. KL, same thing, would be the same measure or congruent to RS. And JL, so I'm using the first letter and the third letter, would be congruent to QS. All of that has to be true before I even look at the images. I could completely cover up these images, not even looking at them. I'm not going to cover them up. So I could ignore that image. I'm covering it with my hand, like you can see that. So I could ignore those images and say, yeah, just based on the name, I know all these things in blue are true over here. Now I can come to the triangle and just plug stuff in. Okay, well, I need to solve for angle X. Well, angle X is the part of the length of side JL. So now I just go over to my little coded thing over here and I say, okay, well, where is, so again, JL, where is JL? Oh, well, here's JL right here. So that means JL is equal to QS. So let me come to this triangle, find QS. Well, look, right there. QS is 14. Those two sides have to be equal. So if I know JL, the length of JL, I don't know the number yet. I mean, I do kind of know the number now. I don't know the number, or I didn't know the number. Now, though, I know, okay, well, if JL is 3x subtract 1, that's the length of it. Whatever expression is by that side is the length of that side. I know it has to equal QS, so I'm just looking at what's right above this. And I know QS is 14. Again, tells me right here, QS is 14. Tells me right there, JL is 3x subtract 1. I just set them equal, and now you solve. Add 1 to both sides, divide by 3, x is 5. I'm going to let you finish that out. Same way with angles. So I can come to the angles. I know if I want to solve for Z, 4z plus 3 is angle K. So I come up here. Well, what is angle K equal to? Well, angle K looks like it's equal to angle R. So let me go to the other triangle. Now here it's a little tricky. I don't have anything in angle R. There is nothing there. So now I got to try to figure some stuff out. Okay, how can I solve and figure out angle R? Well, I know that I don't know anything about the triangle, like it's not isosceles or equilateral, so don't get lessons confused. That they're not, I cannot assume anything unless I'm told it. So I'm not told any sides are equal. I'm not told it's a right triangle. So what I have to do is see if maybe I can solve for this angle down here. Again, just do what you know. I could come, why did we do that? I could come back over here and say, well, I know J, let's do it in blue. I know J is congruent to Q. So let me, angle J is congruent to Q. Let me see what I can do here. Well, J is 58. Let's get rid of that since we're doing it color coded. So J is 58. So I'm going to go back to blue. Well, J is the same as Q. Oh, look at that. I don't have anything in Q, but now I know they're the same. So I can say, all right, well then that's 58 down here. All right, well look at that. Now I have two of the three angles of that triangle. So I can add those together, subtract them from 180, and then that would give me the measure of angle R. So I'm going to write angle R. So those three added together are 180. If I add them together, what is that? 130, 145. So I'm going to subtract 145. So that gets rid of those. I subtracted both of those out. So R is 35 degrees. So now I can, and I should have done this before, I didn't really think about it. I could have set up an equation, even though I didn't know what angle R was. I could have said angle R is equal to, so angle R is equal to angle K. So I'm looking right here. All right, well, if angle R is equal to angle K, I know angle K is this right here. Yeah, I really should have done this first. Again, I try to tell you guys, just fill in data that you know before you even try to start solving. Just fill in everything you can fill in. Now, I just figured out what R was, right? I just figured that out because I was just filling in stuff that I know, and that allowed me to solve for R. Well, then 35 equals 4z plus 3. That's your equation you would use. And you can go through and solve for z. You should know how to do a two-step equation. All right, so again, I know I'm going fast, but you can stop, rewind. You have tons of, you should have tons of notes and problems that we did in class from the book. So that was more of the quiz before Thanksgiving, congruent parts of congruent triangles. Use the name, set them equal. I would just fill in as much data as you can fill in. Don't worry about what the question is asking. Just fill in everything you can fill in. Solve for whatever you can solve for. One piece at a time. You can probably fill in quite a bit of data. Then see what it is they're asking for. So I'm not going to do a lot of algebra or setting up on these. I'm just going to show you the concepts. When it comes to an isosceles triangle, we did not do very well at figuring out which angles are congruent if I know the sides are congruent. So again, if I know, actually we'll use highlighting. If I know that and that, well, that's telling me the sides are congruent. We went over this a lot in class, pretty much every time we mention an isosceles triangle. If I know the sides are congruent, I know the two angles at the base of those sides are congruent. Not the 65 and the 3y plus 2. Those are not congruent. It's the angles at the bottom. So we would need to like follow the side down to the angle. Don't use this. It's in between. That is not congruent. A lot of kids did that though. The two angles, so the 65 and then whatever that is, are congruent. That's what allows you to solve, not just setting 3y plus 2 equal to 65. I have to say, and on the quiz, there were more variables, but it's the same concept. I have to say, okay, well, if I know those two are congruent, then I know this is 65 degrees. Now I can set up an equation saying that those three angles, this is an angle. Everything that's in there is going to go in the equation for that angle. 3y plus 2 plus, so now the next angle, which in this case is 65, the other angle is 65, equals 180. Again, a lot of people just pick two angles. Like for this, for example, for this problem, they didn't set 3y plus 2 equal to 65. They said 3y plus 2. So again, this is incorrect. Do not think this is correct. They said, oh, well, I have 3y plus 2 in an angle. I have 65. And I know those have to add up to 180. Those do not add up to 180. Three angles add up to 180. That's only two angles. That is completely incorrect. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. So that was a mistake I've seen a lot. And then lastly, and I think I mentioned it, I think oh, yeah, okay, I see what this one's about now. So in this particular triangle over here, you can always go back, so I'm gonna get rid of it. So in this triangle right here, if you get a problem, now I don't think any of my problems were just like that, but some similar concepts. They are telling me that the angles are congruent right here. They're not putting congruence marks there. And there was a problem on the quiz where I didn't use congruence marks. I just gave you numbers, and the numbers were the same. That meant it was an isosceles triangle, and you had to figure out what else was congruent in the triangle. Not many people did very well on that one. So numbers, in this case, A is a number. We don't know what it is. I'll show you again. I didn't do that. So I'll draw one out really quickly. If I said this, 7 and 7, well, then that means these angles are congruent. So I'm not always going to give you congruence marks for you to realize. Ooh. I picked the wrong thing. Yeah. So numbers can also tell you something's congruent, just like here. A and A tells you it's an isosceles triangle. If two angles are congruent, two sides have to be congruent. So that allows you to set those. Oh, and then there's no degree symbol. So 5x subtract 28 is the length of a side. 2x plus 11 is the length of a side. So you just set those equal. They have to be equal to each other. That is not used at all. That's just to throw you off. And I think I probably did something similar to that on the quiz. So there's a quick review of all the different pieces. Bottom line is you need to go back and put some time into it. I just really feel like we're not putting a lot of effort into the first quiz or sometimes even retakes. Because I just did a quick search on solving problems for isosceles and you have my videos also. But I mean, there's a million problems you can go in and do to practice these. Not to mention there's IXLs. A lot of classes have really slacked off, which probably not a great idea at the end of the quarter because you're running out of time. So we're going to have that talk in class. But you've got to become accountable. You've got to put more time in outside of class. Again, like I said, we're going to talk about that in class. So. All right. Deadline for quizzes, retakes, missing, whatever, is going to be December 13th. So make sure you're getting all this stuff done. We'll have one brand new grade, and you probably won't have time to do a retake on that one. So that one you better make sure you're prepared for.